I had to really express why did I get passionate about it, because money is not an exciting or sexy topic, but it was the freedom that it gave me both now and the perceived or potential future freedom that it afforded me that I knew I was creating now. Welcome to the Artful Dollar. My name is Ryan Roy. I'm a tattoo artist. I'm a financial coach. I am a seeker of spiritual wisdom and knowledge and a general curious human being. And that is what brings me to the realm of money, is I am curious about this thing we call money, this taboo topic that no one talks about and we all seem to struggle with. It seems to be this missing puzzle piece. And I want to tell the story of how that missing puzzle piece came into my life and really improved all areas of my life. Because ultimately, when we tackle the money topic, it translates into our health, our well-being, our creativity, our personal relationships, and all areas of life start to improve when we improve the area of our finances. So I want to tell my story. What happened? What was I struggling with? Because I used to be terrible with my finances. I very much so was one of those tattooers that felt like, oh yeah, I can drop $500 here, $1,000 here. Like I'll make that back in 2 or 3 tattoos, no problem. And I did that for 5+ years, or really a little bit longer. And it didn't get me where I wanted to go because I was making good money and then I didn't know where that money went. So I want to share with you the story that I went through in hopes that it, one, gives you some perspective on what's possible for yourself and shows you that it is possible. If I can do it, you can. And 2, I want you to kind of see what it is that I now do today, and maybe that would be something that would be helpful for you in the future. So let's start back at around year 5 of tattooing. I had gotten to that point where, I kind of knew what I was doing. I knew enough to not completely fuck someone up. I could start to experiment with styles, but I didn't really yet have a style that was locked in that I felt was my own. That didn't happen until many years later. But yeah, around year 5, I was working at a 50-50 split street shop, just real run-of-the-mill street shop, very busy location. We, had a couple different artists, the standard, whoever comes in first gets the first pick of the day, drop the money in the money box, the satellite boss that was never there, that kind of watched you on the camera and would randomly call in and ask how much money you made him that day. And it was just like your standard street shop stuff, right? The rack of old Cherry Hill flash in the front, just normal shit, right? And I, at this time, was also very active in drugs and alcohol. I drank a lot. I did cocaine. I smoked weed every day, nonstop. And for many years, that wasn't a problem until it was. And I think I was very fortunate that I saw a few things happen at this moment around finances and around my active addiction. I was 26 in this time. And I saw other tattooers at my shop, other tattooers at other shops, just kind of like the world around me of people that were all struggling with the same stuff, like people that were 10 years older than me dealing with the same problems I was dealing with: drugs, alcohol, financial stability. And it scared me. It made me feel like if I don't do something different, then I'm going to end up exactly where they are. Like I saw that, like into the future, I could see 35, 36-year-old Ryan in the exact same place that he's in now. And it kind of terrified me. So I decided to get sober, but I struggled with that. And I was working at a shop where, we tattooed a lot of drug dealers. We were partying pretty regularly. We always hit the bar afterwards. You kind of work a long day and you feel like, oh, I deserve this, And then of course, like me being the generous guy that I am, like, yeah, I'll buy everyone rounds. It's on me and this and that. And it's just kind of like week after week, month after month, same old shit, never really seeing the fruits of my labor accumulate. And I also, around this time, started to look at the numbers. I didn't want to look at the numbers because I didn't think I was going to like what I saw, and I didn't. But I realized, like, I'm doing like 80 to 100K-ish a year. Like, where the fuck is all that money? And I knew that, like, yeah, this is not going to work. If I want to buy a house, if I want to own my own business, if I want to retire one day, the way I'm doing it right now isn't going to get me there. And it's not a matter of making more money or moving to a different shop. It's like something drastic needs to change. And so for me, that first part, I knew that the way I was drinking and doing drugs wasn't helping me. My life wasn't falling apart. I wasn't like showing up to work late or anything like that, or not paying my bills. I was on time. I was very accountable, but inside I felt like a hollowed out husk, and I wasn't able to be the man, be the human being that I wanted to be in the world. And a lot of that came down to my drug and alcohol use. And I started to try to seek help from family members, from 12-step programs. And I did ultimately find my way into AA. And I actually met other tattooers in AA that I didn't know were there, and a lot of people that really inspired me. And so it was this really great community of people. And in Brooklyn, Williamsburg, Brooklyn, like a lot of artists, a lot of creatives, a lot of people that were, not, I don't know, whatever my idea was of like a Bible thumping 12-step AA person. Like, that's not what I found. I found some really fucking cool people that were up to cool shit in their life and really taking responsibility for their lives in a way that I was not currently taking responsibility of my life, and no one around me was. And so that was very refreshing. And I also realized that I can't stay at this tattoo shop and continue to pursue sobriety. It wasn't going to work. And so I left, and I opened up my first private studio, which was a legitimate space, but it was like a room within a bigger private studio. And there was like performance art and other things happening there. It was a great stepping stone, but I wasn't really financially stable at the time. I didn't really have substantial savings. And I also just I didn't know how to manage my money. So I struggled to, I knew nothing about marketing myself, or, Instagram just came out at this time. And so that was new and exciting, but it wasn't like bringing in the clients that I wanted, not in the way that I wanted to. And I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing to grow my clientele. And two, any money I had coming in was still leaving quickly. Even though I wasn't spending it on drugs and alcohol, like, I don't know where the fuck it went. I don't know. It just seemed to disappear. And that was pretty bewildering, that even though this big financial expense in my life called drugs and alcohol was no longer there, I was making like almost the same amount of money, maybe a little bit less because I was in a private studio and I didn't have the clientele yet, but the money was still disappearing as fast as it came in, or faster sometimes. And so I decided that, one, I want to be a little bit more financially stable before I do this private studio thing. It was nice. It was nice to have the freedom, but with that freedom comes responsibility. And two, I wanted to grow as an artist. So I sought out another street shop to work at with higher quality artists, a different kind of environment. And that's what I found. I found someone that I'd known from prior years from tattooing, someone I really admired their work and I wanted to learn from. And so I went back to working at 50-50 split shops. But the other thing that happened at this time was I started to read books about finances, about personal finance. Primarily a book that made a big difference for me is The Richest Man in Babylon. It's an old book. It was written 100 years ago. It was written by a very old man at the time. He was, 100 years ago. And then the book's written about ancient Babylon. So it's a story, which is really cool because you learn about personal finance, how to save, how to build wealth through a story rather than what to do, right? Great book, very dated in its nomenclature, in the terminology, in the ideologies that it has to share. So let me just give that little disclaimer. It did not age well, especially in the year 2023 and probably many years ago. There's just some things in it. If you read it, you'll know what I mean. They don't belong in the conversations we're having today. So just that little plug. Maybe one day I'll rewrite my own story that teaches the same lessons. But nonetheless, it's a very good book, really good lessons that do stand the test of time. They are as valuable today as they were when it was written, and they will be valuable lessons 100, 1,000 years from now, if we all make it that long. Okay, so I'm back at the shop. I'm making more money than I'd ever made in my life. I remember at the time pulling in for myself around $1,500 to $1,700 on a really good week. Like I'd hit almost that 2K mark in 1 week, which for me at the time was a tremendous amount of money. But I wasn't really on top of my taxes. I had no investments for the future. I was starting to save money, and I found a financial advisor through my parents. My mom worked for a company and they had an advisor, and she was like, well, just talk to this guy. And that was my first experience of working with a financial service professional that was my first experience of working with a financial service professional at all, period. And later, which I'll get into, it ended up not being a good fit. And I actually realized that I was not getting the advice that was going to best serve me. So I'll share about that in a bit. The normal shenanigans ensued at this street shop. Now, that's not the case for every street shop, but I had encountered that a lot, where there's just drama and just like personalities that weren't vibing. And there was some active alcohol and drug addiction going on. And ultimately I realized, again, after about 2 years, I was like, I need to get out of this space. And that's when I pursued what I call my first real private studio, which now is almost 8 years ago. I did this time, what was different about the previous time was, one, I had a pretty healthy savings. I had, around 10K in investments. I had around another 10K in just emergency savings. I also had been paying taxes I started paying taxes, and I had built up credit. I was using a credit card. And so I could open up a business bank account and a business credit card, which I didn't realize at the time, but they usually come with about a 0% year-long interest rate. So it gives you some runway to invest in your business, grow the business, earn more money, and then pay back the debt. And so those were a few things that were different that really helped me get off on the right foot this time. But I soon realized that owning your own business, taking on all of the financial responsibilities, not just in ordering supplies, but in paying rent, and then like separating those business and personal. Like even though my accounts were separate, it's still like it all felt like my money. And so I was not managing it well. I had to dip into some of my savings. I mismanaged money, definitely in ways around the studio that, didn't need to happen right then or at all. A lot was wasted, I would say. Money that I could have managed better had I known what I know now. And then dealing with taxes every year was so overwhelming and stressful. And I just felt like I was doing it wrong and I was incapable. And then on top of that, I, wanted to buy a house. I wanted to, continue to grow my business. So it just all felt very overwhelming. And ultimately, I just wanted to do sick tats. That's it. I just want to do tattoos that are awesome and inspire me and inspire others. And I realized at that time, owning my own business as a professional tattooer, that the business side of tattooing was an important element to the professional tattooer, right? If I'm not just a tattoo artist, but a professional tattoo artist, I do it as my profession. And so I needed to take the taxes, saving, money management, investment stuff as seriously as I took the artwork side of things. And that if I did that, it would actually give me more freedom, more time, more energy, more money to invest in the business and to make sick tats. So this is one of the lessons I want you to walk away from this conversation with, is tying your creative practice to your financial practice. They are one and the same. They support each other, and you can't just focus on one without focusing on the other. I mean, you can, but you're going to run into some pretty big breakdowns, as I was running into. Hey, all you Artful listeners, I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you for giving a listen to the podcast. I hope that it's bringing some value to you in your life. That's really why I started this podcast. And if you're getting something useful or valuable out of it, I just want to invite you to go rate and review this podcast. It really helps me out And it also helps other people find this podcast so that they can get some value out of it. They can feel more free around money and just get some wisdom and some knowledge that we're trying to share on here. So again, I'm not really asking anything else of you other than to just leave a review and rating for this podcast. It really helps me out and it helps other people find us. So thanks and enjoy the show. The other thing I do want to point out was that I did have a mentor that was helping me. A friend of my mom, someone she had worked for years ago, did like small business coaching. And she met with me just a handful of times she knew I was starting this new business and walked me through, how to use bookkeeping software, how to write certain things off, what not to write off, how to organize my taxes and my accounts so that I could start to understand the forest from the trees with it all. It all just felt like another language. And so that was really helpful to sit down and work with someone. Honestly, I should have sat with her more than I did, but it was, I wasn't paying her anything. And, she did what she could to help me. And it was tremendous. Even just that small bit gave me this new level of confidence around my finances, which trickled into my creative practice and all areas of my life. And it was around this time that I started to get kind of interested, even I dare say passionate about finances. I don't know why. It still kind of confuses me. I think why, if I had to really express why did I get passionate about it? Because money is not an exciting or sexy topic, but it was the freedom that it gave me both now and the perceived or potential future freedom that it afforded me that I knew I was creating now. So I felt like I was taking control of my financial future, and that feeling felt really good. And so that's why I was passionate about it, right? Tattooing, making awesome tats was a thing that gave me a good feeling. And so I got obsessed with it, passionate with it. And learning about finances also gave me the same good feeling. And so I started to develop a passion for it, which I didn't even realize that's what was happening at the time. But then I started to talk to my clients, my captive audience. They're in the chair for like 3 hours. So I'm like, what are you doing like with your retirement account, or which account do you have? And how do you do it? How much do you put in? And people were like, dude, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. And I was like, oh, I thought I was the only one that didn't know. I thought for some reason, like I was the only asshole that was trying to figure this shit out. And somehow everyone learned this stuff a while ago. And I was the only unfortunate motherfucker that just felt bewildered by it. And then I realized, wow, everyone is struggling with this. And so I would share like, well, I read this, and people would be like, oh, cool. And we'd have these really interesting conversations around money. And that's kind of where I started financial coaching. I didn't know that that's what I was doing. I was just connecting with my clients and sharing what I was reading and learning about. And then I'd get emails from people. They'd book their appointment and they'd email me and they'd say, hey, looking forward to the tattoo session. Also super stoked to pick up that conversation around finances, investing, saving. And I was like, ooh, that's kind of cool that they're like as excited about that almost as they are about the tattoo. That's interesting. So I had this business that now I had an apprentice and I had another artist that wanted to work at my studio. And so I realized I need to get a bigger studio. And I expanded. Again, I had the savings. I was able to open up another business credit card that again had the 0% APR. And I already had this big credit limit, which I don't know how they combined them. So then I had this like very large, $20,000, 0% APR that I could invest into my business without taking any of my own savings out. And then before that was due, before I had to pay that money and pay interest on it, I was able to increase my income, grow my business, take on more artists, earn passive income. For the first time in my life, I was like earning money that I didn't have to trade my time and energy for. It was the coolest feeling, to be honest. And also creating an environment that supported other artists. So it was like a win-win situation. Like no one was at a loss here. It was benefiting everyone. And then I paid off the card before I had to pay any interest on it with money that I didn't even have to trade my time for. That was fucking cool. I was like, whoa, this is like a superpower. This is like a tool that, like any power tool, if you know what you're doing with it, you can create something extraordinary. If you don't know what you're doing, you could hurt yourself real bad, right? You can climb into debt that's really hard to get out of. But I had, some guidance. I had some dumb luck. And ultimately, I had an interest in it. I paid attention to money, to my finances. And I just thought that was the coolest fucking thing. So I, at this time, had an awesome studio space. I worked around awesome people. I finally created the experience at my shop that I was always looking for in other shops, of that camaraderie, that growth, that sense of peace and ease and creative freedom. At this point, I stopped doing color tattoos. I only focused on the fine line, illustrative, dot work, creepy, weird, organic, strange stuff that I really wanted to do. And life was good. I felt confident about my financial future. And I was sharing that knowledge with people. It was like, what more could you want, you know? I then realized that more artists were interested in working with me. And my wife at the time was pregnant with a kid. Of course, what else would you be pregnant with? And we together made this decision to, let's expand the business right before my daughter was born. Like a month before she was born, I signed the lease on a much bigger space, almost twice the rent. And it was a lot to take on at once. But again, I had the option. I couldn't have taken advantage of that opportunity had I not done all the footwork to build the financial foundation that I had at that time. And so I could confidently take risks that were less risky because of the backwork, the foundation that I had built. And I had this new financial responsibility called a child. It was a life-changing moment. Anyone that has kids knows that you are forever changed. Your mindset changes, your perspective changes, your whole outlook on the world shifts when you have a kid. And then 4 months after that, after I'd taken on this new studio, new rent, new bills, new kid, new expenses, COVID hits and I had to shut down my studio. And it was terrifying. I was like, wow, this tattooing, this business that I have relied on my entire life at that point, probably over 10 years, I cannot rely on this to provide food, shelter, security for me or my family. And it was really terrifying. Now, what I did have was I had a solid, tens of thousands of dollars of emergency savings. I owned a house, an investment property with my ex-wife that was earning some passive income and, building equity in itself. So we had we had a solid foundation, and that was put to the test during this time because my studio, while I wasn't making money from my studio, my landlord of the studio was still demanding rent. And so I had to pay the rent on the studio. Thankfully, because I had been on top of my taxes, I was getting unemployment insurance through, the COVID unemployment plan, which I saw a lot of tattooers were not because they hadn't been paying taxes and then they couldn't collect the unemployment. So it was one of those times where I was like, oh, wow, there's these unforeseen circumstances that you could never in a million years predict that could occur. And being on top of my finances, building savings, playing it by the books, doing it the way it's meant to be done, put me in a position of resilience that I was seeing a lot of people weren't in. I felt terrible. Friends of mine, close friends of mine, had to close down their studio permanently. And I saw that all over the world. Tattoo shops and other businesses were shutting their doors permanently, not temporarily. And believe me, I thought about it. I was like, do I shut down the studio? I ultimately decided, you know what? I'm just going to weather the storm. I have the savings because what the fuck am I going to do when we open up? Eventually, we're going to open up again. I have to tattoo again. I'm not going to go back to working in the shop. So I'm really glad that I was able to withstand the storm financially, emotionally, and continue that because tattooing is the greatest job in the world as far as I'm concerned. And there's no other way I'd want to make a living, or so I thought, because I also at the time decided that the tattoo industry really needs some financial education, some financial coaching to support them in dealing with finance. It was clear like there was a big breakdown, not only now, but in the future. Like all these people that are making good money now, 10 years from now might not want to tattoo, might not want to be curled over like a cooked shrimp and, have their backs hurting and deal with clients and all this. Like tattooing's fucking hard. You might not want to do that when you're 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 years old. And I decided, okay, I'm going to get into financial coaching. And I really wanted to be a financial advisor, a licensed advisor. And so I was doing all this research as to how to go about doing that. I didn't really have any understanding of how these things work. I thought I needed to go back to school, and then I was like, oh, I don't. I just need to pass this test, and then I can get my financial advisor's license, but then I need to get a job at a firm. And I just kept taking the next right action. So I hired a tutor. I studied for the test. I failed the test. I studied more for the test. I passed the test. And then this wealth management firm reached out to me, and they're like, oh, you're like a tattooer, but you also have a Series 65 license. Like, we'll work with you because you can't just like wing that job on your own. And so I worked as a licensed financial advisor after 13 years of tattooing with tattoos all over the place. And that was like a really big moment of like, I have knowledge to share with people, and I want to share that, and I can, I'm qualified. And I ultimately realized that I didn't want to be a financial advisor, that I just wanted to do coaching because I didn't want to manage your money for you. I wanted to show you how to get your money managed, how to save, because if I just invest money for you and manage your investment account, I'm not able to show you how to fund that account and get the pieces in order so that you can save enough for retirement. I'm just making sure the account's performing at whatever. And even that, like, they have so many algorithms and things, there wasn't a lot for me to do. So I unregistered as a financial advisor. I primarily focused on coaching. And, my first couple coaching clients were just like random tattooers that I reached out to on Instagram at the time. I maybe had like a couple posts on my Instagram about finances. I was still tattooing full time. And, if I reached out to you during that time, you probably were wondering like, who the fuck is this guy? What the hell is he talking about? But a couple people, took me up on it. I said, hey, look, if you want to hop on a free call, we can just take a look and see if there's something I can do to help. Great. If not, no worries. No harm, no foul. And a couple people took me up on that offer. Some of those people I ended up working with, those became my first coaching clients. I started seeing the difference that it was making in people's lives when they had someone that they knew they could trust, someone that has been through everything they've been through and learned from those mistakes. And then they didn't have to make the same mistakes that I made. And they could, speed up that learning process. The stuff that was taking me 6+ years to figure out through stumbling through the dark and reading books and listening to podcasts and watching YouTube videos and trying to figure out which information I should and shouldn't listen to, I could walk them through in 3 months. And then they were growing their businesses, buying houses, saving for retirement, doing all the things that I wanted to see them doing and I want for everyone. And then I got another client, another one. And then eventually I had to close my books. I couldn't take on more coaching clients. I was still tattooing at the time. I don't tattoo that much anymore. I do a little bit for fun. I love tattooing. But at the time, I was like, my time was split 50-50 and less. I was probably tattooing actually close to 1 or 2 days a week. So I was coaching full time. And I realized I need to be able to coach more than one person at a time. I could only take on like maybe 6 or 7 clients a month. And so that's when I started my first group coaching program. If you were a part of that or you remember, Pirate to Professional was the first iteration of what is now the Artful Dollar financial coaching course. It was cool. It was, a group. I'd never tackled like a group before. I always look at it as like the difference between lion taming and dragon taming. Like working with someone one-on-one, it was really easy to like get into the nitty-gritty. I was worried that was going to get lost in the group aspect. And I was pleasantly surprised that actually something was gained when I moved from one-on-one to group coaching, which was people were sharing their experiences. People were asking questions that other people were either didn't know to ask or maybe ashamed to ask or didn't want to sound dumb or anything. And then someone's like, hey, how do you do this thing? I feel like an idiot. And I'm like, no, you're not. That's a great question. Like most people don't know how to do that. And so something was gained in the group coaching. And I saw the same results, if not more results, better results, faster results were being produced out of the group coaching. But one-on-one coaching is still great. So then we added this one-on-one coaching element. I trained and hired an assistant coach. I also meet with people one-on-one. And now we have 5 total full-time employees that are helping not just coach clients, but onboard clients, manage the back end. It's kind of grown beyond my wildest dreams. And we've now to this day helped almost 300 tattooers and people outside of tattooing. We've worked with acupuncturists and painters and even real estate agents. we have seen these transformations happen over and over again, where people that felt overwhelmed or just insecure, or like whatever they're doing is not working. They were in the exact same boat I was 5-6 years ago. And in 3 months, we can show them the systems that we use. We can get them clear on their future goals and the action steps that they need to take to get there, the map, the roadmap, and ultimately shift their mindset around money. Because that is the part that, if you take a look at our testimonials online, that's the part that most people say was the biggest impact of participating in this 3-month-long journey. Was they have some great systems in place, and they're saving more money, and they're paying off debt, and they're buying houses and expanding businesses. But they couldn't have done that with the systems alone. It was really the mindset shift, the perspective shift. And I'm sharing conversations. That's the point of this podcast. I want to share conversations around money that shift your perspective, but we dive deep. I mean, we get into some heavy stuff. And I love it. It was one guy did the course, and he said in his testimony, he's like, I thought I was signing up for like an economics class or something, some business school. I had no idea that this was going to be about my entire life, that every aspect of my life was going to be impacted by the material in this course. And so I joke with people sometimes. I say, haha, I tricked you into getting life coaching, you sucker. It's a bad joke, but no, it's kind of true. Like, it's a financial coaching course, but in order for me to coach you on your finances, I kind of need to talk about you as a whole human being. And I think that's what's missing in the financial service industry, is that a financial advisor or a CPA or a tax professional or whoever it is, they can talk about the numbers and a little bit of like some management stuff, but not really. They just talk about like, you should do this, so here, go do it. But they don't tell you how to do it. What's missing, the elephant in the room that no one's talking about, is the how to do it, and then the mindset that you need in order to take action. Because if you don't shift your perspective, the relationship you have with money, then it's really difficult to take new actions around money. And that's the magic that I say. Like, I wish people could just be a fly on the wall in this course sometimes. And I try to share as much of it as I can here so that you can get a sense of what magical conversations we're having in these sessions. And if you're curious and you want to learn more a little bit specifically about what that could look like for you, I still offer free strategy sessions. Myself, some of my enrollment coaches, we offer a free hour-long session that you'll take a look at where you're at right now. It's a rare opportunity to have that conversation and look at what's going on right now. What am I struggling with practically, emotionally, spiritually? What's not working? Get clear on the problem, because then we can get clear on the solution. If we're not clear on the problem, we cannot get clear on the solution. We then look at, where do you want to be a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 30 years from now? And then what's missing? What are the elements that, if this was in place, if you had these kinds of systems, if you had this kind of knowledge, this kind of clarity, if you had these mindset shifts, what difference would that make in your life? And how do you go about getting them? Because maybe we're not the right people to help you. And if that's the case, that's fine, right? If we are the right people, if there's something I can do to help you get to where you want to go faster, easier, cheaper, better than you doing it on your own, great. Let's talk about working together. If I can't do that, you're fucked. No, I'm joking. You're not fucked. If I'm not the right fit, there's something or someone out there that is the right fit to serve you. I want to make sure that you're clear on what those next steps are for you. So if we aren't the right people to help you out, I absolutely refer people all the time to either financial advisors or CPAs or other resources that I have that I think will make a big difference in your life. So either way, at the end of this free strategy session, I want you to be clear on what's going to make the biggest difference in your life. And if that's working with us, great. And if it's not, great. That's my goal. So I also share tons of free resources on my Instagram. I have this podcast. We're working on getting a more regular newsletter out. So I want to make available as much information as possible for free. And then if you need help implementing it, that's what we're here for. So anyway, that's my story. If you or anyone you know is curious in learning more, you can check out the website, check out the Instagram. Feel free to reach out. I'm very active in the DMs. You can always shoot me a DM. and I would look forward to speaking with you. Hey, I hope you enjoyed the show. Again, I just want to prompt that if you got some value out of this conversation, please go and leave us a rating and a review on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you saw this podcast. It really helps me out, and it really helps other people to find this podcast. I want more people to have these types of conversations around money so that we can all be more free and at ease and abundant and able to create the lives that we really want to live. So please share this and rate and review. Appreciate it. Thanks.